In today's video, we look into the biggest drug gang courtroom cases that went through the media worldwide. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and like the video to help the channel creating more content for your enjoyment. Let's start with the first case that was titled as the most wanted drug lord. Dira Antonio Usaga David, who leads the Gulf clan, has confessed to running a huge system of criminal activities. The well-known Colombian drug dealer Dira David, known as Antonio, has been given a punishment of 45 years in jail by a judge in the United States just last year. This happened because Antonio admitted to selling drugs and leading a criminal group in a court in Brooklyn, New York. In court, the 51-year-old said he was guilty of leading a big group of criminals and smuggling cocaine. He was in charge of the violent gang called the Clan del Golfo, or the Gulf Clan Cartel. I apologize to the governments of the United States and of Colombia and to the victims of the crimes that I've committed, Usaga said. The US Attorney's Office in Brooklyn asked for a 45-year prison term. They said Usaga had been in charge of a terrorist and paramilitary group for almost 20 years and chose not to participate in the government's peace efforts. He ordered the killings, kidnapping, and torture of rivals, as well as individuals he believed were cooperating with law enforcement. The attorneys said in court papers, defendants' desire for control and revenge simply cannot be overstated. Usaga's lawyers said he used to be a child soldier and grew up poor in Colombia. They said his understanding of the world was shaped by the country's long history of conflict, spanning almost 60 years. They asked for him to be sentenced to a maximum of 25 years in prison. Having been born into a region of great conflict, I grew up within the conflict, Usaga said in court, advising young people not to take the path that I've taken. We should leave armed conflicts in the past. US District Judge Dora responded strongly, saying that the environment was not a valid excuse. She talked about her own upbringing in public housing in the South Bronx. She told Usaga that he had opportunities to change his way, but he chose not to. Antonio was a big-time drug dealer wanted all over the world. Colombian police finally caught him in October 2021 after he'd been running from them for years. They sent him to the US in May 2020, but only after making a deal that he wouldn't get a life sentence. Officials stated that when he was in charge, the Gulf clan caused violence and harm in parts of northern Colombia. They used extreme force to dominate the main route for smuggling cocaine. Prosecutors said that Usaga commanded the killings of people he saw as enemies. He claimed that one victim was tortured, buried while still alive. They also said that he offered reward for killing people, police officers, soldiers, and people from other gangs. The US Attorney's Office also accused him of being cruel to the general public. They said after his brother was killed by the police, Usaga ordered everyone to stay at home for several days. Those who didn't obey were warned that they might be killed. In the court hearings, Usaga confessed to causing serious harm and violence, and military work homicides were committed. He said, adding that there was a lot of violence with the guerrillas and the criminal gangs. Tons of cocaine were moved with my permission or my direction, Usaga told the court. The Gulf Clan is one of the many groups in Colombia that have added to the violence there over the years. These groups included leftist rebels, right-wing organizations, drug traffickers, and criminal gangs. Finally, the person organizing the crimes is in jail. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think they solved one of many cartel problems, or do you think another person would just take his place and will go on with the operation? We go on with next case. A gang in Luton that imported drugs into the area have now been arrested. The leader of this group that brought drugs into Luton from his home in Dubai has been sent to prison. On April 29th, Mohammed Khan, who is 35 years old, got sentenced to 27.5 years in jail. This happened after the Eastern Region Special Operations Unit began looking into his criminal group and trying to find out the details. Marcus went to live in another country to avoid the UK police. He was running a very organized gang from there. He would tell the command to the lieutenant, couriers, and other members what to do, like where to hide drugs and guns. But he got caught when he came back to his family house in Prince Avenue, Watford during the COVID lockdown in March 2020. At that time, the police also found lots of messages exchanged by the criminals using the Anchor Chat app. The detectives learned in that time a lot about how Khan helped the gang. About a month later, the police searched the homes of his friends and arrested Mohammed, Riz, and Zakir. They found a lot of drugs like cocaine along with money, guns, and bullets. Investigators think the group had brought in and spread lots of illegal drugs from January to April 2020. They believe it could be hundreds or even thousands of kilograms. Khan got convicted for planning to sell cocaine and lots of other drugs. He also had guns intending to scare people and had ammunition to that. Michael, 31, and living on New Hythe Lane in Aylesford, Kent, was a person people trusted to bring drugs into the country. He had contacts in the Netherlands that helped him bring drugs, mostly cocaine, into the UK. He did this mainly through Tilbury Drugs. Recently he was found guilty of planning to supply these drugs and was sentenced to 24 years in prison. The group of organized criminals has been given a total of 83.5 years in jail. Detective Steve Doty said, "It is difficult to overstate the impact that dismantling this OCG will have had on our communities. This group of criminals imported enormous amounts of Class A drugs into the UK, which will have caused widespread harm up and down the country, both in terms of the medical effects of the substance as well as the wider criminality exploitation associated with this drug dealing. When you have a brother you share your life with, it's always a great feeling. Having a family bond and supporting each other is something precious and can help in so many ways to bring positive impact. In this case, the Jacksonville brothers, Rashad and Marquez, did the opposite and shocked with the operations. Let's look into it. Two brothers from Jacksonville, Rashad Johnson, who's 32, and Marcus Johnson, 35, got arrested for dealing drugs. They went to court and were found guilty. The judge decided they spent 30 years in jail for the crimes. The two brothers were found guilty of drug charges, and because they were seen as leaders of the Out East gang, extra penalties were added to that. Before the judge decided their punishment, the brothers' family asked for mercy. However, the prosecutors pointed out that they already have been given so many opportunities to change their ways. One after another, family members of Rashad and Marcus Johnson spoke in front of the judge. They wanted to convince the judge to give the brothers a severe punishment. This came after the Johnson brothers were found guilty of several drug-related crimes like trafficking, possession and conspiracy. Their parent opened up during court and said, "I often think about things I could have done differently as a parent. I know my sons could have had a better outcome in life. I don't know what kind of sentence, but I would ask that should be lenient towards me. I have a beautiful family which includes 4 kids and a stepchild," Rashad Johnson said. "I'm not a bad person, I'm not a monster, I'm not a gang member. Just a human being who made mistakes." The other brother also said some words to lower his sentence to the judge. "I'm not labeled as a menace, an animal, a gang member in my community or anywhere else." He went on to say, "And I just want to say I'm sorry to my family for putting them through this situation and letting them down." State attorney explained to the judge why the state wanted a 30-year prison sentence. They had the opportunity to better their lives after serving 3 years in the Florida State Prison. They came back out and continued doing the same pattern of criminal activity that they have been doing so many times before. They provided financially for their family, but how did they do it? By selling drugs, he said. The judge sentenced the brothers to 30 years in the Florida State Prison with 581 days of credit. As the brothers were taken away, Rashad looked back at his family and waved. The two men could have gotten life in prison just for the drug charges, but the prosecutor thought 30 years was fair. We go on with the brothers' case. This is one of the most talked ones in the United States. Two brothers from Florida, Jeff and Chris George, were in charge of a big opiate operation called the Pill Mill. This operation was one of the biggest in US history, according to the FBI. They said it caused thousands of deaths. One brother said that their operation was like the Disneyland of pain clinics. Chris and Jeff George together managed 4 pain clinics and other related business in South Florida. The operation happened during a time where there was a big increase in opiate addiction from 2008 to 2010. This was when the prescription painkiller business was doing really well. People all over the country were stating to see how harmful these legal drugs were to communities. Before this case, people knew about drug overdose, but they didn't understand how the system behind it worked. The George brothers showed them how it all fit together, put ads in local newspaper to tell people about their clinic. They got doctors to give out medicine and gave them rewards for giving out lots of medicine often. They didn't take insurance, only cash and credit cards to avoid problems. They also hired women from Craigslist to give out the pills the doctor prescribed. The clinics were open to anyone. People from places like Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, and other areas hit hard by opiate problems came to their clinics in Florida to get drugs. In an interview from prison featured in the documentary, Jeff George claims that they've intended a new type of tourism. He compares their pain clinics to Disneyland, suggesting they attracted people seeking relief. The film reveals that some drug dealers even used buses masked as church vehicles to travel to these clinics from Kentucky concealing their illegal activities. An FBI agent named Jennifer Turner interviewed a man who compared these clinics to a candy store, implying they were easy to access and could provide what he wanted. Meanwhile, the George brothers were showering in millions and living lavishly. They competed to have the most luxurious life, buying expensive watches, flashy cars, boats and multiple homes. Jeff drove a Lamborghini while Chris owned a huge customized monster truck. In the movie, Chris George proudly talks about how much money the American Pain Clinic made. They racked in a whopping $40 million in profits all by themselves. According to official papers from court, American Pain handed out 80 million doses of oxycodone. They put them among the top 9 buyers of oxycodone in the whole country. Mackenzie, who used to be an FBI agent, shared, out of the 20 doctors who prescribed the most drugs in the whole country, 5 of them worked at one of Chris' places. They are proper doctors with real licenses, and they seem to running a legit clinic. There was a man named John Frisky who owned a computer service shop in Jacksonville, Florida. He was feeling very sad because he had lost his son through drugs, and he was passionate about music and enjoyed playing the guitar. Around the same time, a place where people could easily get addictive pills opened up nearby in the same shopping area. This pain clinic was owned by a guy named Zachary Rose. He was competing with the George brothers to be the top pill seller in Florida. Lots of people from other places came to Rose's clinic for drugs, and Frisky didn't like it being in the strip mall. Then the clinic asked Frisky to fix the computers and security cameras. Frisky saw a chance here. He talked to the DEA and said he could help them to close the clinic. DEA agents put a wire on him and listened to his talk while he fixed Rose's computers. At the time, doctors there were boasting about their daily earnings. Frisky shared that he would remove their old hard drives, put in new ones, and hand over the old ones to the federal agents. He mentioned they never asked me any questions, never tried to stop me. I was glad to help shut him down. Rose admitted guilt to a drug conspiracy charge in 2012 and got a 15-year prison sentence. The FBI reports that around 3,000 people passed away due to the overdose connected to the clinics owned by the brothers. In August 2011, everything fell apart for the brothers. Federal investigators searched their homes and found illegal stuff like weapons and drugs. They even checked their mom's house, where they found safes hidden, filled with $400 million. The brothers, along with their mom and 29 others, got indicted under the RICO Act, which goes after organized crime. 13 doctors were also charged, and most of them admitted to lesser crimes like money laundering or wire fraud. Chris George admitted to being involved in racketeering plan and got 17 years in jail. He served 11 years and got out in September 2021. Jeff George also admitted to being part of a racketeering plan, got a sentence of 15.5 years. He was found guilty of causing the death of a patient due to a drug overdose and got another 20 years added to his sentence for that. Jeff is still in prison serving his time. Meanwhile, it's been quite some years since the FBI closed down their business. Chris George thinks that neither he or his brother had anything to do with the overdose that caused death. In the end, it's their responsibility. They are responsible for themselves, I'm not, he said in the film after his release from prison. I don't think we created more addicts. They were already here. They just had an easier way to get the drugs and a safer way. Now they don't even know what they're getting. What are your thoughts on this case? Did they get what they deserved? We go on with the secret drugs lab that made their two criminal cousins £1 million by shipping their packaged amphetamines and other drugs in massive quantities to Scotland. A group of criminals led by Terence Earl and his cousin Stephen ran an illegal operation. They used nicknames like Thick War and Octohand on EncroChat to bring drugs into the country from Europe and other places. Then they moved the drugs between other points. They also hide large amounts of drugs in a holiday park in Blackpool. They used these drugs to make amphetamines in a secret lab worth £1 million. The police operation tried on different planned days to get what they wanted to convict them all. Police could stop the illegal activities when they found 560 kilograms of a chemical called APAA in December 2020. This chemical is used to make amphetamine. The discovery was made during an operation. They found the chemicals hidden in 3 pallets. These pallets were in the back of a truck. The truck that had been located was in a warehouse hidden in Hill Holiday Park. The person in charge, Ferrick, had been given orders for this loading. Police stopped the truck using a device called a stinger. This amount of stuff could have been used to make about 1,000 kilograms of drug. That's worth about £1.1 million when sold on a big scale. In April 2023, Earl confessed to planning to sell cocaine and to making amphetamine. He got put in jail for 16.5 years. Ferrick also confessed to planning and selling these drugs and being involved in a crime group 3 months later. He got jailed for 8.5 years. The community was happy that a big operation was closed that poisoned many people across the country. Let's go on with the case that went viral worldwide. Most wanted drug lord Taggy was finally convicted after the Netherlands police got all evidence they needed. The Dutch mob boss, Rudo and Taggy, and 60 other people were found guilty of committing 6 murders in a big trial called Marengo in the Netherlands. Taggy was cleared one of the murders, but he got a life sentence for the others, which ended the long case. Since 2019, the 46-year-old person had been in prison in the Netherlands after getting arrested in Dubai and sent back. These crimes shook up society, making some people call the Netherlands a narco-state. Back in the 1970s, Amsterdam's Chinatown was a big spot for drugs coming in from Southeast Asia, but then a gang war broke out. and that got the police looking into what was going on there. In the 1980s, cocaine started showing up on ships from South America. Rotterdam, being the biggest seaport in Europe, became a major place for it to land. There was so much cargo coming in that was really hard for authorities to check it all properly, and since the 1990s, the Netherlands had been the top place in the world for making MDMA, which is a popular party drug. Before Taggy, there was another famous drug lord in the Netherlands named Klaas Boersma, who was known for always wearing black suits and talking to his man about eating well, so people called him the preacher. During the 1980s, he put his money to the red light district in Amsterdam to clean it up, and he had pictures of high-ranking police officers in bad situations. Taggy used to lead the group called the Mokro Mafia or Morocco Mafia. His family, who immigrated, had a network for bringing cannabis from their home country. Taggy used the same network to create a big business with cocaine. Even though Taggy had been in jail recently, cocaine is still being sold just like before. It's strange, but while everything else seems to get more expensive, cocaine has actually become cheaper over time. Some experts describe Taggy as a big boss in the drug world, but not the only important person. Even if you take out big or small players from the system, it keeps going by itself. Taggy was such a feared figure that he also used his phone in jail to do some work from inside and get what he wanted. He murdered people from inside and tried to murder every witness possible to get lesser punishment. Do you think the criminals in today's courtroom moments get what they deserve? If you know cold case that could be featured on the channel, please write it in the comment section. Take a second to write your thoughts down below. Please subscribe to our channel and check out one of these videos here. See you in our next video. Take care.